listeners, and welcome to the 6th episode of the Retrogaming Podcast. My name is Rob, username is Z.Kayet. On this episode, we're going to have two Daniels. With me, as always, is Daniel, fellow moderator, Spooky Cookies. And there's one more Daniel on our show today. He's our special guest. You may better know him as Johnny Cage.
1, 2, 3, fight!
So what got you into martial arts to begin with? What was the first thing you think?
Not the first thing I think, but I know.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so you have a definite. There's a moment.
What happened was my brothers. I have 3 brothers. 2 are older, and Carlos Braden is the youngest. But at the time, the distance between us, we have a lot of years between us. So I think I was an accident, and I know definitely Carlos was an accident. So anyway, my 2 older brothers needed a little bit more. My dad felt they needed a little more discipline in their life and wanted to take them to martial arts. And this was late 60s, like 69 or something like that. Mm-hmm. And they went to martial arts, and I was like, oh, I want to do this. My dad and brothers are doing it. I want to do it. My dad's like, no, you're way too young. So my brothers lasted about a month, Ruben and Tony. And I just kept bugging my dad. I was like, I really want to do it. For some reason, I was really attracted to it. And then my dad finally told me the story later on. He goes, I thought for sure you'd be like your brothers and last like a month or 2, and then I would never have to, deal with you bothering me again. So I took you to martial arts. He's like, I didn't know that he told me the story like in 96 after one of my trips to China. But he was like, I never knew that 1970 till 1996 at this time you would still be doing this.
Yeah, when I was a kid, my experience with martial arts was the same thing. I went for like a year one time, and then I just got interested in other things, so like a lot of kids do. But you have made it a career. So what kind of like styles do you do? What's your current? Tell us more about your career path in martial arts.
I started with judo, and I did a little Shotokan karate. And naturally, I was very young, and I stopped doing that in about 1974, 75. I did it for almost 5 years. And at the time, I was taking going for my black belt. And they said, congratulations, you passed your black belt, but because you're not 18, you can't wear your black belt. So I became disenchanted with judo and karate. And I was like, wow, I better look for something different. And then Bruce Lee, I always looked up to Bruce Lee, and I was like, man, I wonder where I can actually learn some Kung Fu. So my dad, we live close to Chinatown. My dad took me to Chinatown, and then we found a place that we studied. And actually, it's a very famous teacher. His name is Wei Lun Choi. He's the grandmaster of Lu Hou Ba. Or a lot of people call it water boxing. So, my dad takes me in there, and this guy speaks barely any English, but for some reason, him and my dad spoke for like about an hour on nothing related to martial arts. And then in the end, my dad's like, okay, you're going here because I really like this guy. And so I started doing Kung Fu then. Then later on, as things progressed, I just liked it, and I just continued with the Chinese martial arts. I took 7-star praying mantis. I did some other, just kept studying until presently. Presently, I have a master level, but it's an old school master level. Like, sorry if I'm babbling.
No, it's great. Yeah. See, I'm listening very intently because I'm learning all of this cool stuff.
Okay, so like a new school master is somebody who, they learn their system, and then they go for a week or 4 days to a camp, and they're reviewed on all the techniques of that system. Old school master is, I was training the first time it was recognized, and I go into my master to train, and he's like, he looks at me kind of oddly, and he's like, when did you get connected? And then I was like, well, yesterday I kind of like was doing, practicing my kicking and punching, all the moves, and everything just seemed to like click. Just one day it just turned on. So he goes, yeah, you could tell that you can keep a mind-body connection through your movements. And he goes, you've actually reached like beginner master level. And I was just like really astonished. And then I was like, when you said that, like all your teachings, when I was doing it, before you would say like, no, it's this. And I would be like, what is he saying? But as soon as it clicked, I realized everything he told me. I was like, oh yeah, it is like that. And it was just kind of, the universe just came in line for me. And later on in some of my trips to China, some other masters famous in the martial art world also were like, oh, you have a mind-body connection. You're a master now. So that is what we call an old school master. So it's not really, they don't need to test you on anything. It's just it's more like you reached, you're a laser beam. You're no longer firing bullets. So it's kind of more like a lightsaber rather than a regular sword. It'll cut through anything. So
would
yeah.
you say it's not so much of a technical aspect? It's more of a mental sort of, you're able to act more in synchronization with what you want to do. It's less thinking about something.
Yeah, I have discovered, one of my masters, Go Junhua, he was like, it's like you discovered physics, but in your body, in your complete, you can have it upper and lower. He goes, but to have the complete connection, you have upper and lower physics, meaning you're constantly in the best posture you can possibly be for your physical attributes.
So we have some listeners who might be interested in getting into martial arts. What would be your advice? Now, our listeners are going to be, probably between the ages of like 15 to 50.
Yeah, martial arts is great for exercise. I would just suggest that, look over, most important thing is your instructor. Make sure you click with your instructor, that, he's not, naturally he's an instructor, so he's advanced. He should be able to beat you up, but that doesn't mean he does beat you up. You need more guidance. It would be like, oh, I'm going to teach, my nephew who is 13. I'm going to beat him up. Well, naturally, I'm a man. I have man strength. I can naturally beat him up. So you want to get an instructor that you click with, and then, and then try it for as long as you can. I would say in traditional martial arts, it would take you about 4 years to get a decent foundation. And after 4 years, you really start learning the art, how to really self-defense. And again, traditional martial arts are a little different because, again, stop me if I'm babbling.
No, not at all.
Like in Chinese martial arts are designed to fight other martial artists. So it's not like, oh, I'm going to go out and, fight a guy who doesn't know martial arts. Same thing with Okinawan karate. Okinawan karate was made to fight other people who were martial artists. So a lot of times right now, some of the newer martial arts are like, oh, defend yourself, which is great, but that's not really like a traditional art. And it only has certain amount of depth because just because of how it was designed, it didn't have that,
to counter itself, right?
Yeah, like Chinese martial arts got cultivated over like 3,000 years, so it's deep. You know what I mean? It's deep, and a lot of the philosophy and a lot of the culture and embrace that it came up with is because of the length of time. So, you learn to respect life a little bit more, things that are associated with traditional arts, respect your elders and things like that, because usually you learn from, your elders, or they supported you. You recognize that they supported you.
The art sort of evolves over generations.
Yeah. Lots of generations.
So let's go ahead and switch up gears. Let's talk about Mortal Kombat. So how and when did you get involved in making a video game?
I got involved because I am a geek. Who knows martial arts? So I kind of have the best of both worlds. My brother, Carlos, Richard DeVizio, Andy Kadelka, and John Tobias, Jesse De La Peña, a bunch of us would get together and play this Dungeons and Dragons. And naturally it was, very social. You're playing Dungeons and Dragons, you know how it goes. Everybody's, picking on everybody else. We're making fun, but we're all friends. So it's pretty good. So at that time, John was a great artist, and he was starting to go to art school. So eventually, a little while later during art school, John called me up and said, "Hey, I have an art school project to give you the whole story. School project. I want to shoot a martial art film in the woods." And I was like, okay. And he's like, "Me, you, Carlos, and Rich, we're going to jump in my dad's car, and I'm going to take you out to the woods. And I got this, we're going to just shoot it on the fly. And, I really need this for my grade at school." And I was like, okay. So we threw the camera equipment in the trunk, and we're heading out to the forest preserves out in Chicago. So John is looking for a spot to shoot the film where, it's kind of where it would be secluded, because he didn't want people walking around in the background of his film. And so he's slowing down, looking for a spot, and he decides to turn left on a two-way, it's the forest. It's not really a street. But he didn't know that the guy behind him at the same time was getting kind of because we were only doing 40 and the speed limit's 45, so he tried to pass us as we were turning. He clips the car and we go spinning, and our whole lives flash before us. So we got out of the car. Everybody is all right. The equipment some of it is ruined, but that whole thing, we became really tight after that. We were in that whole thing, and we were just like, holy cow, we could have been dead and stuff like that. And, he's like, oh my, oh my God, my dad's going to kill me. Then in the end, they bought him a new car because the guy was totally at fault. But that project never got finished.
Wow.
He tried to shoot a little, but because, certain things were damaged, it didn't go well. But he still got a good grade and passed. And then a few years later.
So what year was that happened?
Sheesh, I don't even know, man. I'm bad at it. I'm like 1,000 years old. You're gonna ask me what, which century that was in?
55 is the new 1,000.
Right. So later on, he calls my house. John calls my house. And, he goes talks to my mom. Hey, tell Daniel to call me. And my mom's like, hey, John called. And I was like, okay, yeah, whatever. I'll call him later. So I kind of kept on meaning to call him, but how it is when you're at that age where you're out all the time, you're kind of partying a little bit.
So these are your teenage years, right? Or his teenage years? Are you guys in your 20s?
He was in our 20s. I was always a little older than the group. But still, when you're a male, you don't mature for a very long time.
Can be the case, for sure. From experience.
Yeah, so John called, and finally he called Rich. He's like, Rich, tell Daniel to call me. I know you see him, you guys work out all the time. Tell him to call me. And so Rich was like, Daniel, call John. He really wants to talk to you. And I was like, okay, I'll call him right now. Because Rich is the type of guy, when you tell something, he will hound you all day long to the ends of the earth. So I called John up, and he's like, hey, I got this idea for a fighting game, and I want to film some stuff so that way I can pitch it to my boss. And I was like, okay, well, what's the scoop? What do you want to do? What do you want us to do? And he's like, just come in. I'm going to shoot you guys doing some martial art moves, doing your moves. And then I'm going to pitch it to my boss who wants to see my ideas about this game. Later on, the boss would be Ed Boon. I'd find out his name was Ed Boon. But so we went into the studio, and we shot some video, goofing around, because again, it was just like we were playing D&D. We were harping on each other, and John was yelling at us, "Come on, guys, I got to get this done." It was after hours at work. It was 8 or 9 o'clock at night, because it wasn't official what we were doing. We kind of just got into a room and just started shooting. And then later on, he's like, "Hey, they really liked it, and we're gonna start this project. It's gonna be like a filler game. We're gonna make 200 games, and for coin-operated games, and this is gonna be really good, cool." And I was like, well, he's like, "I'll pay you guys what I can. It's not a lot of money. We'll pay you guys." And then I was like, "Oh, can I get one?" And he's like, "No, dude, I can't get one." And I was like, "Man, John, I'm not gonna do it." And he knows I was kidding, but in the end, he was like, "Oh, if I get one, I will give you mine." So we started working on the project.
Wow. So it started with no expectations at all. What would be Mortal Kombat, right?
No, I got to do whatever I wanted to do with light guidance.
Uh-huh.
And two,
So that's so strange that it's such a household name now. You can't imagine saying like, "Oh, well, we're gonna see if this works. How does it, if it goes?" And then you couldn't even get a machine. I hope you did eventually get a machine.
No, I did not. But
No, never.
That's the thing is like the project was John created it and Ed had some input and I had a lot of input into the martial art because I'm a martial artist. So everybody kind of didn't step on each other's toes. So the creative endeavor was more like, okay, we need this punch. And I'm like, John, what kind of punch? He's like, well, how many punches can you throw? And I was like, okay, here you go. I started throwing like, I'm a martial artist. So I did vertical punch, horizontal punch, screw punch, nail punch, all kinds of phoenix eye, double phoenix eye, all these kinds of different punches. I was like, okay, if we stab, and later on we would just learn like, because it was 2D, the basic concept is we took the footage and it was like rotoscoping. So John actually just drew over whatever he wanted over the film. Mm-hmm. So we found out that a lot of the techniques, for example, if you know a side kick and a roundhouse kick,
right,
they look exactly the same. The only difference you can tell is, the shape of the foot. But overall, it's kind of like, we're going to do this and that and this and that. And the shooting was a little barbaric. Like our first day of shooting, Johnny Cage was the first character. He is the father of all Mortal Kombat characters, even though a lot of people don't like him. He gave birth to everyone, not only Cassie, but everyone. When we went in to shoot, we go into the film studio, and it turns out that the film studio is actually a storage studio where everybody's taking their old furniture or whatever they want, props from other things, and they shoved it in there. So we spent about 2 hours, John and I and Ed, cleaning out, trying to make a space to shoot this video game. We borrowed lights from desks because there was no lighting in there because they only had fluorescent light, overhead lighting. And we were like, we can't use that. So it was really, really barbaric. And again, it was just, it was just all on the fly.
Now, for some of our listeners who might not be familiar with how Mortal Kombat was done technically, so Mortal Kombat, it wasn't motion capture like people do today where they wear little balls and they video capture. They were actually filming you, and then they digitized your likeness in your film and put it in the game. So your likeness is actually in the 1992 Mortal Kombat arcade game. Have you heard of a process like that before you started filming this game? Have you ever seen real people in a video game before that?
No, this process was kind of new, but in our younger days, I remember John, myself, Carlos, Rich going to the movie theaters to see the old Lord of the Rings and also The Hobbit, and they were done in like that type of thing, rotoscoping. There was also a movie called Wizards, Bakachi, and again he did some of that too. So that idea was part of our not childhood because we're a little bit older, but that was part of our previous relationship, that type of thing. So yeah, it was pretty cool.
So you mentioned Johnny Cage. Let's just go through the line of all the characters that you captured for.
Okay, first we did Johnny Cage. He was the hardest because we didn't know what we were doing and just experimenting a lot with the moves. And the next up was Kano. I think Kano was next. Kano or Raiden. Kano or Raiden were next. And then to follow that was Liz's character, Sonya, who, by the way, created the first friendship. We could touch on that later.
Okay.
And then the ninjas, Scorpion. Originally, there were going to be 2 ninjas, Scorpion and Sub-Zero. I did both of those. And actually, the guy who was going to do, who did Kung Lao, was supposed to do Scorpion and Sub-Zero, but he broke his toe. we were like working out together. He dropped a weight on his toe, broke his toe, could not film that week. So John is like, you know what you're doing. We need to really get this going. You know what you're doing. Jump in the uniform, in this costume, and let's shoot this. And by the way, that costume was the worst costume to ever wear. I did not want to shoot those ninjas, and they became the most popular ones. But there were safety pins. I was getting poked by safety pins because the costume was all kind of just made up by whatever we kind of had an idea. At one time, I used a black T-shirt as a ninja mask. That didn't work out so well, so we tried to just piece everything together.
Let me ask you about just while we're on the ninjas, let me ask you about Scorpion and Sub-Zero. Now they're very similar, just to the untrained eye who just might be walking past an arcade and they might seem very much like the same character. Obviously, we know that their specials are different, but with the little details in acting, were you trying to act them out as two very separate characters? What was your approach?
Most of the basic kick, fight, punch, that is the same. The only thing is like, okay, they were like, oh, we need a different fighting posture. And I was thinking like, and two, at that point, we already knew what kind of we were looking for. Like the fighting posture had to be authentic, but it couldn't be that authentic because the hitboxes, if you extend your arm too far out, you would already be in somebody's hitbox. And then, the programming, they would react to it. So the fighting stances are a little inward or shorter than in real life. So I was just going through fighting postures, and John would be like, "That's good. Oh, no, that won't work. And that's good. Oh, so eventually we knew we had to make it a little bit different. So eventually we tried to pick the best one out for that. But it also had to, whenever we kicked, it had to look like it came from that stance.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? So if you kick and punch, it would seem like, oh yeah, we're coming from that thing, from that stance. And as far as like other moves, like special moves, I recall that Ed asked me, hey, I want you to throw a lasso around, pretend you're throwing a lasso and pulling a person over. And I remember looking at him and saying, dude, you would have to kill me to do a Wonder Woman move. Not doing any Wonder Woman move. But then I told him, but in the Chinese martial arts, we have this thing called a rope dart. It's a dart, and it's attached to a rope, and it's used to pull people off their horses. It's like an anti-cavalry. If you're on a horse, on a war horse, especially a war horse, kicking and you're chopping, and it's like all trained, those guys are the most dangerous on the battlefield. But this rope is, you wrap it around your body and you shoot it out, and then gets in them, and then you could pull them. And then Don was like, okay, let's try to shoot that. So that's what we did.
You came up with Scorpion's spear move.
Yes.
That was you. That's awesome. That's one of the most iconic moves of the whole game.
In the end, yeah. All because of ego. All because I did not want to be like Wonder Woman.
I can't even picture Scorpion throwing a lasso over somebody. Like, the idea in my head right now is just so absurd. I'm trying not to laugh too hard. But that's really cool. So, do you still keep in touch with some of the other cast members, or with John?
John, I haven't seen like over a year or two. He moved to Los Angeles. Same thing with Hosang. They moved to California. But I work out with my brother Carlos. I see him like at least 2 or 3 times a week. Naturally family gatherings and stuff like that. I see Tony Marquez pretty often. Rich, I see once in a while, along with John Parrish and Philip Ahn. There's a arcade, Galloping Ghost Arcade. It's huge. It's the biggest one in the world. So they let us come there and hang out, and we kind of just geek out and play the coin-operated video games. You can play all you want for free. It's
nice.
It's awesome place. It's a really awesome place. So we go there, and sometimes he has events, and we just as many of us can show up as possible to sign autographs for the fans, or just to kind of goof around. We're always yelling at each other, teasing each other. You have to see some of the you have to be there to really see how, you know what I mean? It's like we're friggin' teenagers again, riding and ripping on each other. It's funny. It's good. Yeah, we're tight.
Let me ask you about when Mortal Kombat sort of became a controversial game. and how you sort of reacted to that, because I know it became this big thing where it was almost one of the first games that was considered too violent, that maybe something that younger audiences shouldn't be exposed to. And when that sort of campaign first started coming out, it really went after Mortal Kombat and Doom. And I just wanted to know what were your thoughts on when that first sort of hit.
First of all, Doom rocks. I love Doom.
Yeah.
So that out of the way, my thing is like we never designed it for like kids. We designed it for people to go to an arcade that have their own quarters. So they have to have some kind of allowance and be allowed to go to the arcade by themselves, because during this time that's what it was. And two, it was like not, nobody, I made the game on the perception that there would only be 200 made. I never knew that they were going to make like 200 million.
It's sort of a rags to riches story, huh?
Yeah, well, yeah, for them, yeah, but
oh yeah,
yeah. So I know that they had, I know that Sega had the blood, Nintendo did not, but we never thought of it for, that it was ever going to do that. And in the end,
never thought it'd see a console release or something like that.
Yeah, well, we never even thought it was going to be a console. Well, yeah,
as you said, it was meant to be a filler game.
Yeah, a video game console. That's all we thought it was going to be. So in the end, people would be on me about that, and I'd be like, well, that's not how we designed the game. But people who own the company have the right to do whatever they think they need to do. It's hard to fight those guys against anything. They have a lot of money. If you have money, you can do whatever you want, as we know.
Well, did you have any personal, did it affect you like personally that people thought that this was like this violent game that was going to cause like destruction of children's minds and stuff?
No, because at that time, all the people that I knew were already were part of their kids' lives. So they would know, the kids knew it was a video game. Even me at a young age, when I was young, I remember my older brother bought me a tomahawk axe, and he wrapped it up like a tomahawk. And on Christmas Eve, I took it and hit the second oldest brother in the head. And then my mom took the tomahawk away, and I never saw it again. And I never hit my brother again, because I was like, holy cow, I got my butt spanked, and I know not to do that anymore. So a lot of, if not that you should spank your kids, but if you bring up your children, they kind of know what's real and what's not. And if they don't, there's something wrong, whether it's, I don't want to blame the parents. It could be something biological, but you know what I mean? It was kind of,
I'm okay with blaming the parents in this case.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we agree with you. We were those kids, our parents got us these games. No one went out and started killing each other. Looking back on it, to me, it seems insane, the kind of controversy. It just seems literally insane that people would think that something like a video game can cause people to go out and do violence.
Well, yeah, the people want to blame stuff on other people. They don't want to take responsibility, especially politicians. They don't want to take. They're always blaming somebody else, but they're paid to fix things, but they don't. They'd rather blame other people and just try to avoid, try to be like, oh, this is what's causing, this is what's causing violence in the whole world is Mortal Kombat, right?
I guess because blaming other people gets the pressure off them for not doing their jobs, right?
Yeah, dude. I'm like, what do you think, man? If I would have hit my brother, my mom would beat my ass. Sorry. I'm
it's
sorry.
Fine. You can say whatever you want. We're not on TV.
Yeah, exactly. So, you know what I mean? So our upbringing was, and, my mom didn't like beat us or anything like that. But, I knew like, oh, guess what? You got to listen to your parents. Don't do anything goofy because there's consequences later. And, try to be nice to everybody because there is consequences later. And, yeah, so I think it was just.
The key word here is that people have to be responsible for their actions.
Yeah.
I think the big sort of takeaway that they were trying to do with a lot of these, saying that these games were wrong or bad or inappropriate, was that they were saying that people didn't have the responsibility. They weren't able to take it upon themselves to distinguish fantasy and reality, when that's really, that's something that you kind of personally have to do if you want to participate in society, I feel,
Yeah, Daniel, you are correct because your name is Daniel.
There you go. But
Well,
I'll
not
take
so
it.
much.
I'll take it.
So
Yeah, I agree. At that time, it was, but we as gamers band together and we, overcame it. They have a rating on it, but really parents don't listen to that rating. They just buy their kids. I know 4-year-olds who watch the whole Saw episodes, and I was
wow.
like, man, you would never do that to my kids. Are you
No,
crazy?
I wouldn't let my kids do that either. I mean, I will let them go to a certain point. Like, I would let my son watch The Matrix, but I'm not
Yeah.
gonna I'm not gonna put Saw on because I think that's
Yeah,
blurs the lines more between fantasy and just kind of screwed up.
yeah, but there's people out there, and God bless them, but or whatever that they do it if their kids know, maybe they're raising their kids to know that that's just entertainment. Who
But
knows?
I will let my son play Mortal Kombat anytime he
Heck yeah.
wants to, in any
It's
of
a
the
classic.
games. Of course it is.
Yeah.
It's one of the best
Yeah.
game franchises of all time. When I was a kid, I played Street Fighter and I didn't like it, but I loved Mortal Kombat. I have all of them still. I have all the ones from when I was a kid on Genesis and most of the newer ones too. So Daniel, what happened? I heard so there's a lot of rumors going around why you weren't in Mortal Kombat like 2 and 3 and stuff. What's the real story?
The real story is we tried to take them to court to get what we thought to get what we thought.
What do you? Sorry, can you explain what they, we, and they? Can you just sort of?
Sure. All the characters
Okay.
decided to. Yeah, all the characters who shot the coin operated game, especially the first one, were like, you guys said 200. We did this, game. You guys didn't pay us for the rest. And they were like, no, you signed your, naturally you signed your rights away. But I was thinking like, well, yeah, but you told us it's only 200. And then you both, then John and Ed said, don't worry, these guys are not jerks. They're going to take care of you. Little did I know that they meant that they'd take care of me like the mafia. But anyway, so we started proceedings, law proceedings, and I'm going to tell you my opinion of what happened. We just got, I had 2 law firms. They had 68 law firms. We got pretty much mowed over, but my brother signed off on the contract because they promised him work. Same thing with Richard. They used him for a little bit. He used to work for Midway at the time. The rest of us pretty much, it didn't go our way for whatever, more than whatever reason it was. So that's why I wasn't. They told me, oh, if you sign this, you'll be in 3, and we'll put you in the movie. And I was like, well, how are you gonna put me in the movie? And then they're like, well, maybe, and I met with the producer of the movie. He shot some video of us to get some ideas about the movie, and I did it in good faith. And nothing ever turned out to it naturally. And he was like, well, I can make him an extra. And, and it's not the type of work I do. Nothing wrong with being an extra, but it was like not, I co-created the game. I didn't come up with the idea, but every character in 1 and 2 has some of me in it, or things that are in the game that did make it a difference. And I think that difference did make it more popular because it was more authentic. So yeah, after that, it was just not welcome to that company.
Did it affect your friendship with John Tobias?
No, it did not.
That's good.
Yeah, it is good. John's an awesome guy. He's friggin' brilliant. He created the game.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like I always referred to John as the Paul McCartney of the video game, because he did create it and he gave Ed credit. And it's kind of like they're marked as co-creators, but in my view and what I've seen from MK, John created almost the whole thing. I'd say at least 80% of it.
So Daniel, you did some other games after Mortal Kombat. Can you tell us a little bit about those?
Yeah, I did some advertisement for Bloodsport. It's like the urban legend. Bloodstorm. I love that. I love that because it's just like everybody's always like, oh, you're a traitor to Mortal Kombat. And I just kind of are like, man, you don't even know. What happened was with that game was one of the guys who was working on Mortal Kombat 2, one of the artists, got hired by a different company, and he really, he watched us work all the time. He really was, oh man, you're really good at like doing this martial arts stuff and coming up with ideas. I'm at a different company. Will you come, shoot some stuff for us? And then I was like, he went through John, and John was like, dude, he'll pay you. And I was like, well, and I was like, well, you guys, can I do that? And he's like, yeah, dude, totally, go do that, make some extra money. And so I went and did some photos for him and kind of for the game and stuff like that. So yeah.
So was it just advertising, or you weren't in the game at all?
No, just advertising for the game. And then the other games were like Hosung wanted to do some games, so we invested some money in the Jaguar system, and we tried to do some games for that. The Realm Fighters. There was another game, I forget.
Is it Kasumi Ninja?
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. Hey, can you guys excuse me for a minute?
Sure.
No.
No, you can't be excused.
Get over here.
Okay. All right. That was worth it. I think that was worth it.
Was that
worth it?
See you in a little bit. Yeah. Awesome.
Just a second though.
All right. Was that speaking of that, was that your voice?
We have to leave it in.
No, that was actually Ed's voice, but the idea was Rich DeVizio's idea to get over here. When I was doing the rope dart stuff, when I came up with the idea of doing the rope dart, I threw it out and I pulled it up, like, because we would ham it up and just goof off. And I pulled it up, and Rich is like, Rich was like all excited watching it. He's like, get over here. And they really loved it, and they put it in the game. And it's, it's DeVizio's idea. It's just, yeah, that's how what I mean when everybody contributed like to that. Without that, without these little things, it wouldn't have been the game it was. So again, I didn't come up with the idea, but I came up with the personality.
That's really cool. It's really great to hear how a lot of this went together. I want to go back to some of your other games real quick, because we kind of veered off for a second. Because that was just awesome. Can you do it one more time?
Get over here.
That's so cool. Because unfortunately we're on a radio show, but to be able to see you do that, because you are Johnny Cage. I mean, so it's like I'm talking to Johnny Cage and I'm back being like 12-year-old me. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah. When you look at Scorpion and Sub-Zero in the arcade version, and you see their shots, you get like, my mom's like, that's you. And I was like, yeah, Mom, but that's my mom. But anyway, yeah, a lot of people even now are like, oh man, that's you, totally you. So yeah, it's nice to hear that stuff. But the other games we did never really took off. Naturally, Jaguar system did not survive. The big fight over what systems were going to win. But it did a little bit of work on them, all on spec. It was fun. Those are still fun. It was like with Osang and a couple other people. It was really fun.
Were you actually in the games, or was it just you and Hosung support help produce them?
No, we did shoot a little bit for each of the games. When we had some, they had a couple of games that were actually not completely working, but worked a little bit for people to try out. So yeah.
So what about Tattoo Assassins? That was a game by Data East that you're billed all over for. A lot of marketing was done for it. A lot of gameplay screenshots were released. What happened to that? That was one of Hosung's projects that actually we never filmed for that game. The Realm Fighters we did, but for Tattoo Assassins, we never got into the studio to actually film any of the rotoscoping or anything like that. Again, it was going to be a game more like rotoscoping as opposed to, Right.
So that game, like I said, it just didn't, it didn't survive. That game system did not survive.
Now you mentioned the movie. I'm sure you've seen the movies. Do you like any of the movies, or have you played any of the other Mortal Kombat games after your game?
I like first-person shooter games. I play a little bit of Mortal Kombat. when people ask if they can play against me and usually get my butt beat, which I don't mind. It's pretty cool. It is pretty cool to see what they can do with it. And, most of them are really nice, no rubbing in my face.
Yeah.
Of course, they're like, well, I'm not going to rub in your face. And I'm like, good, because I don't want to have to kill you.
Because you can beat them in real life.
Yeah. So, yeah, but the fans are really good. Gamers are really a good group of fans. I think better than regular just movie people fans or anything like that. They're a little more personal, or when they're in that area, they're in their environment, they're very nice. But yeah, it's like I don't really do that. I like the fan-based Mortal Kombat movies. And actually, I'm on board to do MK Fate's Beginning, which is a fan-based independent movie. We're going to be shooting in a couple weeks.
Awesome.
I'll be doing I'll be doing the choreography for that. So I'm giving them a plug because it's going to be really good, and we're going to try to stay as true to the script as we can without getting ourselves shut down, which is a problem. Yeah.
Is there while you're plugging it, is there a website that people can go to?
There is, but I don't know it offhand. But I'm sure if they plug in MK Fate's Beginning, they will reach it, and hopefully they can take a look at it, and at the very least, take a look at the project. Like I said, it's going to be really fun. The actors look really good. I read the script. It's pretty good as far as like following the Mortal Kombat story. And as I said, I like the fan-based Mortal Kombat movies. The only thing I don't usually like is most of the time they have whoever's portraying Johnny Cage as a very poor fighter. I really don't like that, because in real life, Johnny Cage would beat them all.
Well, in the first movie, he totally kills Goro.
Yeah. Yeah, he does. And, the comic book felt different, but yeah, no, it was, I think in the comic book felt different, as I recall. Maybe not, but it was kind of, but still, the actor who portrayed him was more of an actor than a martial artist.
Right. I see what you're saying. Yeah, you can tell that he didn't have the skills in real life.
Yeah, you can. I think people are getting more educated and know when people cannot. Too, they have a little compassion. Don't make fun of people who can't really fight. But I think that a lot of them are learning. Oh, that's a real kick, or oh, that kick wouldn't work. I think a lot of fans are getting wise to that.
Yeah, back then in the 90s, you really had a lot of that where you can tell it was like overly faked, overly exaggerated, like fighting in mainstream movies, not martial arts movies, but in like mainstream movies. And now the audiences just don't buy it anymore, right?
Yeah, it's the way they shot. You shoot tight and you can cover up somebody's, the tighter the shot, the less martial arts they need to know, just because you can't really tell what's going on. You can't see the way their foot is coming up or kicking or anything, or the punching. Close in, you cannot tell that stuff. But that's where I come in. I can make anybody look like they can do martial arts.
So do you do a lot of that kind of work now? Do you do a lot of working with
I do
choreography
I do
and stuff?
Well, yeah, I do a little bit, and then I'm going to do another plugin, because right now I'm developing a program that I'm going to teach people how to do martial arts who are in cosplay. Cosplay people, they're awesome. They spend a lot of time on their costumes. They have a lot of details in the costumes. But what I notice is that whenever they pose a picture, it looks good when they're just standing there. But when they hit a fight pose, it looks like totally they don't know any action. So I'm trying to, I've got some stuff that you can go to my website. I think they're working on it right now, but it's www.masterpesina.com, where you'll just be able to gather different lessons and put them together so you can actually look like martial arts for your cosplay. Whether it's hand or sword, because I know like 32 different weapons, where they all don't look the same. And their particular properties. So yeah, you'll be able to go there and get like put stuff together and be able to be like, oh, I'm gonna get, for my costume, I'm gonna do this type of, and pose for like action poses and look pretty good.
And this will be an online program available from your website?
Yeah, and yeah, a lot of the material is free naturally, so but yeah, so that way, like I said, people spend a lot of time and money on their costumes. It'd be cool if they just, and martial arts takes a long time to learn, at least decently. So, but here they'll be able to learn the ins and outs of postures. They'll learn the right way, what to look for. What's the difference between Southern crane and a Northern crane, meaning the way you hold your hands, or things like that. Little details that us geeks need to know.
So, speaking of your current career, tell us what else you have going. Have you done a couple projects? I just watched Press Start. You've done a couple movie projects. I just watched Press Start earlier this week.
Yeah.
Tell us some of the things that you've got. Tell us some of the things that you've got to do.
Yeah, like recently, I've been heading down to South America, and I'm going to be going to Paraguay in October, actually, and I'm going to. I got invited to Wizard World Convention here in Chicago to do that. So I do a few appearances, but my life is more of like a martial artist. I think that's I really like that. So as opposed to acting gigs and other being in movies or choreography are all awesome, but in the end I really like to teach martial arts.
So you're an instructor. So that's your full-time job.
Yeah, that is my full-time job. It's in our school is in Chicago proper. It's at we train out of a place called Fortes Martial Arts, which is a really cool place. A lot of different types of martial arts are taught out of there, but we run our kung fu classes out of there. Yeah, it's good.
Okay, we have
I can't say more than that. Like, it's an awesome place,
Yeah, and again, you can find out more about that if someone's in the Chicago area and they want to take martial arts lessons from you. That's on your website.
Yeah. They'll be able to go to www.masterpesina.com.
And we'll have all of this information in the show notes, listeners. Don't worry about it. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. I know right now we're updating or doing a little work on it as we edit things. But yeah, you can go there or just, look me up on Facebook or Twitter or anything like that. So you can shoot me a message. I answer every single message I get.
We'll definitely put those contact links in the show notes as well. So we have just a couple user questions that we haven't already covered in our conversation.
Sure.
And the first one is, shouldn't Mortal Kombat in the game, shouldn't the combat have been mortal? So why are you still alive?
I am Mortal Kombat because Johnny Cage won everything. Everybody else is a fake.
Obviously, that's the only correct answer.
Yes, Johnny Cage beat everyone, even himself. Johnny Cage is so tough he could beat himself as Scorpion and Sub-Zero and Reptile and Smoke and Noob Saibot. That's how tough he is. So that's why. Actually, it's a video game. They want your money, and they're gonna. It's like when I play Halo. I die, and guess what? Oh, I'm back again, and I can go through the mission again.
Okay. Our next question is, speaking of Halo, what are your favorite games? You mentioned you're a big first-person shooter fan. What are some of the ones that you spend time on? What systems do you game on?
I do Xbox. So when I'm with my brother, we do Sony. But I do like Halo naturally. Call of Duty. Used to do Doom a lot. Lately, not so much because I've just been a lot of work on these little projects that I've been getting. But yeah, I'm all into first-person shooters, and even then, I'm not that good at them. But I really like to do them. I think more because all the fighting games, I'm like, oh, I would never fight like that. So I think I have a harder time. I'm harder on fighting games. I'm like,
it's harder for you to suspend your disbelief that this is real.
Yeah, and especially if my character doesn't kick quite correctly. Like in the first Mortal Kombat, we all kicked pretty good. We were all actually more martial artists. So my big thing is with the new Mortal Kombat is when I can tell when people are not, it could be my own curse. I can tell when they're not really good martial artists, when they're only mediocre martial artists. And I kind of grimace and I'm like, oh, I don't want to play this game. I don't want, because I take it like personally. I think the character is me. That's the geek in me. And then I'm like, no, I would never do that. I want to do a game that I can't do. Oh, I can't really shoot. Well, so I want to do that game.
Yeah, I think it's always harder suspending disbelief when you're a subject matter expert, right? It would be like if you're a doctor watching ER. You're like, oh my God, they're doing everything wrong. All these terms are crap. And you're like the doctor of fighting.
Yeah. Yeah. So that guy's going to die for sure. Oh my God. No lawyer would do that. So for me, I have a hard time. Though I like it more like if I'm out with friends / fans, because all my anybody who's a fan who's on my Facebook page, I refer them to as friends because we have that common bond of being a gamer.
Yeah.
So I don't mind when I play fighting games with them and get like I said, it's really fun to play them even if they beat me up. It's really cool to experience. They're like, oh my God, I can't believe I'm beating up Scorpion, or whoever one of their favorite characters is. Oh, I can't believe I'm fighting you. It's awesome.
That really is awesome. Is there anything else that you want to cover before we go? Because we're just about at our hour.
Okay. No, just keep creating your art. Keep, driving. Don't give up. And sometimes in life you must fight.
Oh man, I have to tell you, it's been great talking to you, especially as a fan all these years. Like I remember, like when I was like, God, young, like 13 or 14 or whatever, maybe even younger, and they had a magazine and it had you and Liz, like pictures of you guys, and I was like, it just totally blew my mind that these are like real people. And so all these years later, just to get to hang out with you on audio conference and have a conversation with you, dude, it's just awesome. I just want to tell you that.
Oh yeah, well, thanks for having me, and thank all the people who listen to this program, for having me in their wherever they're listening from. But yeah, that's awesome.